Good morning friends, welcome to the weekly session of current affairs. And as we do every week, we are doing this week also. We will be covering the current affairs from 3rd of December till 9th of December. A lot of important events happened during the last week. Most important of all, the G20 presidency, although we got that on 1st of December, but we will be covering in this week's session. Then we celebrated International Cheetah Day. Then we will be covering certain editorials with respect to rhino conservation and elephant conservation, and we will be looking into other important news with respect to international relations like the Wassenaar arrangement, some important news with respect to culture as well we will be covering. So maximum topics we have I've tried to include here in today's lecture. Okay, so without wasting any time, we'll start the class. The first piece of news picked up is India's G20 presidency. See, we've got this G20 presidency, and this is I would say a very big moment for us. We got this presidency for 1 year because every G20 member gets presidency for 1 year, and for that we have designed a logo. And this logo, if you are living in Delhi, you are traveling by metro, you will see this logo displayed over there in the metro as well, and this logo is displayed on 100 monuments all across the country. So let's first look at the logo which we have designed. This is G20. This earth is located on a lotus, and we've used this word Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, when it is translated to English, it simply means that the world is one family, and that is how, or that is why I would say this underline goes: one earth, one family, one future. So this is basically the logo which we have kept. Multiple colors like orange and the green are used here in this, and the transcript or the written part is in the blue color. Anyways, when we assumed the presidency of G20, we External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar was addressing a group of students, college going students, and while addressing that particular group of students, he was highlighting certain aspects or certain facts about India's G20 presidency. We look in the details of his speech. Then you need to understand one thing, one very important thing, that there was no G20 summit as of now. The G20 summit in which India will be the president will be held in September 2023. Just now India has only got the presidency of G20, and there was one meeting of G20 which was headed by the Sherpa. Who is a Sherpa? What role has the Sherpa to play, and who is the Sherpa or who is the Indian Sherpa? We'll just discuss. Okay, so this is all. This is we are going to discuss in this particular topic. And while addressing the students, S. Jaishankar said that New Delhi will seek to emerge as the voice of the global south. Now this is an important word, global south. Global south basically consists of South America plus Asia plus Africa, these three continents, and coincidentally this is the developing world or underdeveloped world. This is the developing or underdeveloped world. Now this global south is kind of a metaphor which is used for developing or underdeveloped, and north is a metaphor which is used for developed countries. So basically New Delhi wants, basically India wants to emerge as the voice for the global south, means developing and underdeveloped world in the G20. And we want to depoliticize global supply of food, fertilizers and medical products. These should not be influenced by the global geopolitics which are going on. These should be away from that, so that people do not suffer for these basic necessities, because the last year which has gone by, we have seen in the aspect of Russia-Ukraine war how the world was impacted by lack of supply of wheat, because when Russia blockaded some of the ports of Ukraine in Black Sea, and Ukraine is a supplier of wheat to many countries in the world. Almost I would say 17-18 countries of the world depend upon Ukrainian wheat. So that is basically the agenda, that we want to depoliticize it. We do not want such basic necessities to get influenced or to get impacted by whatever geopolitical situations happen all over the world, because here the ultimate sufferers are the common man. Then the presidency steers G20 agenda for 1 year, because we will be having 1 year, and India will hold over 200 meetings in 50 cities comprising ministers, government officials, civil society members, leading up to the final summit in New Delhi in September 2023. In September 2023 will be the annual summit of G20, and that is a summit where India will be the president, because India's presidency is going to stay till December next year. Now about G20, if I say, basically it is a group of 20 I would say countries, or I would say 19 individual countries and one grouping, that is European Union, that is G20. Okay, we'll see abhi members and all, don't worry on that. But G20 is when it was formed, it was established in 1999. Okay, the world's 20 largest economies came together and they established G20, and G20 is a group of finance ministers and central bank governors, means RBI governor and finance minister. When it was established in 1999, it was like this, from 19 individual countries and European Union as the 20th. But apart from these, the finance minister and the governors, it actually seemed like it is a financial organization. But after 2008, in 2008 there was this recession, great recession in USA. Now after that, the heads of the state or the head of the governments were also included as part of G20. G20 was elevated to a forum of head of the state or head of the government in 2008 to effectively respond to global financial crisis of 2008. Okay, now to understand this better, we'll go to the green board and we'll see where now G20 1999 formation year. At that time it was only finance ministers, plus central bank governors. They were meeting of 19 countries and one European Union. But 2008 it got divided, or basically there were two legs now. One was FinMin, finance minister, plus central bank governor. The other was head of state or head of government. Here the head of the state in India is the president, head of the government is the prime minister. Obviously prime minister is representing India because prime minister is having the real powers. But now these are two parallel arrangements in G20 presently. The heads of the state also meet, the finance minister and the central bank governors also meet. But the head of the state or the head of the government, they are represented by a person, and they are represented by a person which is named as Sherpa. Sherpa represents them, and every country has its own Sherpa. India also has its Sherpa. Now the present Sherpa is Amitabh Kant. Don't misinterpret it for Amitabh Bachchan. It is Amitabh Kant. He is a member of I think an ex-member now, but he was associated with Niti Aayog. He has some association with Niti Aayog. Okay. So he is representing Narendra Modi, the head of the government, and this is a parallel leg which is going on. So this is basically the arrangement of G20. Now, G20 is a forum, not a legislative body, means no laws are made. You have to understand this. Its agreements and decisions have no legal impact, but they do influence countries' policies and global cooperation, means whatever is agreed to in G20 is not legally binding. It is not legally binding. Take note of it. G20 members represent around 80% of the global GDP, because these are the world's largest economies. 75% of global trade, 60% of the world's population, and very, very important, 79% of the world's carbon emissions, which they need to look into. They need to specifically act on this aspect as well. ठीक है, growing economies, they want to grow economic activities in their respective countries, they want to forge collaborations, but they should also forge collaborations for environment sustainability, environment conservation, because around 80% of the emissions are coming from these G20 countries. So this has to be looked into, very important. Then if I talk about, two parallel tracks are there, already discussed. Finance track led by finance minister and central bank governors, and the Sherpa track led by Sherpa. A Sherpa is a personal representative of head of the state or head of the government who prepares an international summit such as the annual G20 summits. Basically, Sherpa track clears the way for a head of the state or at a major summit. Basically, what Sherpa does initial meetings and all, and like a Sherpa meeting was held right now, and he discussed all the things in that meeting, and he will give the briefing of that meeting to the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister will deliberate on those details in September annual summit, September 2023, when the annual summit of G20 will happen. Now, if I talk about the membership of G20, here is the membership represented by a map. So you can see Canada, USA, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, South Africa. Only one country from this African continent is there. Then Australia, Indonesia, then we have South Korea, Japan, China, India, Russia. All these are part of G20. Do you have to memorize the names? Yes, definitely you have to memorize. Apart from these, we have the EU as a member also. So EU is 19 plus 1, it is 19 individual countries plus 1, that is EU. Okay. In the previous notes also, in previous months, I think in September, October, we've discussed the concept of G7, G8, G20. Okay, there also I've shared some notes, so you can refer to that as well, and you can refer to this as well. When it comes to membership, you have to memorize these. Now the Sherpa track. The 4-day gathering of the Sherpa track to G20 summits started its first formal meeting with dignitaries from multiple countries. Now this G20 talks or this G20 presidentship of India comes at a very crucial time in I would say the world affairs. There is worldwide inflation going on. Russia-Ukraine war is still going on. There is multiple disasters happening, climate shocks happening. Situation is not so good. Multiple countries, they are standing at the doorstep of recession. Recession can knock their doors anytime. So very, very important or very crucial time, I would say, where India has assumed presidentship. The G20 talks come at a time when the global economy is experiencing multiple challenges: rising global debt, high inflation, a slowing growth rate, all of which can be tackled under the Sherpa track. The Sherpa track will set the agenda for G20 leaders in September 2023 and will engage on topics from 13 working groups ranging from energy, trade and investment. They will be talking on all these. 2 new groups, however, have been formed: Disaster, Risk and Resilience Group and Startup 20 engagement. Disaster risk and resilience group basically will be talking about all the climate induced disasters and what impact does those disasters have, and a mechanism can be set or not for compensating the losses and damages due to those disasters in developing and underdeveloped countries, and who will be compensating? The developed countries will be compensating. This is the principle of loss and damage, which we covered I think in November when COP27 we were covering. So that will be discussed here in this track as well. Then Startup 20 engagement. Startup 20 engagement will be like the startups of these 20 countries. They can invest in each other's countries so that economic activity goes up. Things like these will be there. So this is called as the Startup 20 engagement. Now the agenda and key priorities for India. Now India's Sherpa Amitabh Kant invoked India's G20 presidency theme of Vasudev Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future, and he wanted to evolve strategies for green development. Green development is basically that kind of development which is environment friendly. Fostering climate finance. Climate finance means developed to developing. Developed countries should invest in the developing countries or should give finance to the developing countries. Technological transformation and digital public infrastructure. Readying multilateral institutes for the 21st century. 3 F's: food, fuel and fertilizers. These should be these should be immune to, or these should be devoid of any impacts of any geopolitical situations. The broader theme of women led development. All these will be the aspects, or all these will be the topics which India will be picking up. Then on trade and investment, the discussions will focus on resilient global value chains. What does this resilient mean? Resilient means any shock is absorbed by these, I would say, trading lines or trading routes. The trade is, I would say, shock proof, or trade is resilient. Why? Because when COVID came, so it was found that the trade is not resilient. The trade went down because that trade was not able to take that shock. But now countries all over the world are talking about trade resilience, or I would say the logistic resilience, means they want to make their logistics sector proof, shock proof or resilient enough to bear any kind of situation, so that the trade goes on, the trade does not stop. Okay, so that is there. Then integrating small and medium industries and global trade and trade for growth and prosperity. On development, we will be talking on sustainable development goals as well, and this life, I would say, life is a concept which was given by Narendra Modi very recently, I think in 2021 Glasgow summit or somewhere else, but this is basically sustainable. I would say this concept of life is for sustainable development. In the times to come, whenever it is in news, I will be covering it in detail. It is basically a theme of development in which you learn to coexist with, you develop also, and you take environment conservation as part of your life. Okay. So that will also be discussed. On employment, because employment generation is very necessary, the working group will talk about addressing the global skills gap, sustainable financing for social security, gig and platform economy. What is gig economy? You need to understand this as well. Gig workers are those workers which are not on, I would say, they do not have a traditional employer-employee contract, or they do not have this traditional employer-employee relationship. Employer-employee relationship is every month you get a salary for whatever work you do. Okay? You do more work, you do less work, you get the same amount of salary. You are on permanent payroll. But gig workers are basically those workers which are on I would say contractual basis, or which are on the basis of project. You complete the project, you get the money. You do the work, you get the money. So there is no traditional employer-employee relationship. It is basically that. Now example, if I give you, is Ola, Uber drivers, or Zomato delivery guys, or Swiggy delivery guys. These people are gig workers. They get amount per delivery. वो जितना deliver करेंगे, they'll get that much amount. So that is, they get paid per work basis. ठीक है. There is no formal employer-employee relationship over there. So that and this gig economy is growing rampantly in India. So we are talking about that also. On the health side, discussions will revolve around prevention, preparedness and response for health emergencies, digital health for universal access, strengthening cooperation for vaccines, therapeutics and diagnostics. Then on education, foundational literacy and numeracy, strengthening research and innovation, tech enabled learning and the future of work will be critical issues. Then on energy, discussions will focus on low cost finance for energy transition. Energy transition is basically transitioning or change from non-renewable energy to renewable energy. So we want it to be low cost. We will be discussing on all these. Now, External Affairs Minister, when he was addressing some college students, what was he talking about? Let us discuss that as well. India's endeavor would be to create consensus through consultations on key global issues. India will look to emerge as the voice of the Global South. Global South, I told you what is Global South. Global South comprises Asia, Africa and Latin America. India would flag concerns on issues such as energy security, food security, access to healthcare, climate action and climate justice during its G20 presidency. He urged students to play a key role by acting as ambassadors of the country, means ambassadors of our country, and whenever these students come in contact with students of other countries, particularly the G20 member countries, then you have to highlight what India is wanting, what India wants to do, what India is doing. So that is why S. Jaishankar called them as ambassadors. The celebrations, how we are celebrating it. 100 monuments across the country basically will be illuminated with the G20 logo and its colors for 7 days as India takes over the presidency of the grouping. The list of monuments drawn up by Archaeological Survey of India to mark the occasion includes the Shankaracharya temple in Srinagar, Nalanda, Bihar, Purana Kila and Humayun's tomb in Delhi, Modhera Sun temple and the ancient Dholavira site in Gujarat, Tipu Sultan Palace, Bengaluru, Hemis Monastery, Ladakh, Chola Temple, Tanjavur, Konark Sun Temple, Puri. It is important to notice or to note that Taj Mahal in Agra, despite being a UNESCO World Heritage Site, will not be illuminated with the G20 logo. The reasons are not yet clear why Taj Mahal was not chosen. Okay. So this was all about G20. We have assumed the presidency, not all about, there is one more topic left, the G20 Troika. Okay. So after discussing that, I'll just sum it up. The G20 Troika, basically during India's presidency, India, Indonesia and Brazil would form the Troika. Now what is a Troika? Actually, per se G20 does not have any headquarter. G20 does not have any headquarter. Okay? You take this as a point. But there is this G20 Troika which is there. G20 Troika comprises of 3 countries because it is Troika. The last president, the previous president, that was Indonesia. The present president, that is India. And the next president, that is Brazil, will form the Troika. And this is the first ever time when the Troika comprises of developing countries only. This is the Troika of the Global South, if you notice. Asia, South America or Latin America. Okay. So this is the first time that this Troika is comprising all three countries are from the developing world. It should be noted that the bloc does not have a permanent secretariat or headquarters, and the presidency is supported by the Troika, previous, current and incoming president. So this is all about G20. G20 as a grouping came into existence in 1999. Earlier, when it came into existence, it was only a grouping of finance ministers and the central bank governors of 19 individual countries and one EU. Then 2008, there was another leg added, and that leg was the head of the state or the head of the government. The head of the state or the head of the government is represented by a Sherpa. And when I talk about the Sherpa conducts meetings in G20, and these meetings are basically gives input to the annual summit which is going to happen in September. Now, in the present Sherpa level meeting which happened here, it happened in the city of Udaipur. Many issues were discussed, ranging from climate conservation or climate change to food security, to fertilizer security, or with respect to fuel security. Then we also discussed about how women can be empowered. We discussed about how trade can be resilient. We wanted to make our trade resilient. So multiple issues were discussed: how to improve employment generation, how to improve skills, how to improve healthcare. All these were discussed in that meeting. And External Affairs Minister parallelly was addressing a group of students. He was telling what is the main agenda, and India basically wants to represent, wants to be a voice of the global south in G20. When I talk about the logo of G20, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam is a phrase which is used there, which simply means the world is one family, one earth, one family. This is this I would say slogan also written over there. Then how we are celebrating it. We are celebrating it by displaying the G20 logo on 100 monuments in India. Some of the monuments by ASI where the logo is being displayed, we have seen. Taj Mahal, it is not being displayed. Then we talked about G20 Troika. It comprises of 3 countries: the outgoing president, the previous president, the present president, and the incoming, the next president. G20 does not have any headquarters per se. So this is how G20 is. G20 looks like. Keep following the news, keep following the updates with respect to G20, and a lot of activities will be happening in the run up to the September 2023 summit. Before that, a lot of activities will be happening. The next piece of news is China on Yudh Abhyas exercise. Yudh Abhyas basically is a military exercise which is happening or which happened in a place in Uttarakhand called as Auli. Auli is a beautiful hill town. It is there in the, I would say, Garhwal region of Uttarakhand, and a lot of I would say it gets snow covered in the winters, and you can visit for skiing if you like skiing. Skiing happens in Auli. But anyways, coming back to the topic, Yudh Abhyas exercise was happening between India and USA. It happens every year. This time it was happening in Auli, and China objected on it. China says that India is violating 2 agreements which were signed between India and China on maintaining border peace. By conducting this exercise, Yudh Abhyas. Exercise is conducted annually between India and USA with the aim of exchanging best practices, tactics, techniques and procedures between the armies of the 2 nations. India and US are conducting the 18th edition of this joint military training exercise in Auli, Uttarakhand. Now, through this news piece, we are covering two aspects. First is China's objection, on what basis China is objecting, and one topic is exercise Yudh Abhyas, which we generally pick up exercises which happens between 2 countries. So Yudh Abhyas happens between India and USA every year. The armies of India and USA do this exercise. But when China made this claim that India is violating the agreement on border peace, there were two agreements on border peace signed with China, one in 1993 and one in 1996. And I don't know the reasons, even government of India does not know the reasons that why China is saying such. Actually, we don't know which provisions India is violating. Neither me nor government of India, no one knows that which violation of those agreements which China is claiming, 1993 agreement, 1996 agreement, is being violated by India. And India hence hit back at China and said that you don't tell us that we are violating any agreement. In fact, you have violated those agreements multiple times in Ladakh region, multiple times in Sikkim, multiple times in Arunachal Pradesh, and you don't school us for that. Actually, China is apprehensive. China is not liking the fact that India and USA are doing this exercise. And China believes that, whatever aggressions it has done in the Ladakh region, there may be a possibility that India might retaliate back with the help of USA, because India is preparing itself for a two-way war. Two-way war means there can be a possibility that we might be at war with Pakistan and China at one point of time. And that is why we are preparing ourselves for a two-way war. And this is the official statement issued by Rajnath Singh, Minister of Defence. So, not now, some times back, a few months back, this statement was issued. So, China is apprehensive that if we are at war, then there might be a possibility that USA also might be with India, and that is a problem for China. But anyways, we might have this implicit intentions of giving a signal to China that we are cooperating with USA, or we are doing this exercise with USA. But we are not violating any agreement per se, or any clause of that agreement, the 1993 agreement, the 1996 agreement. What is this agreement? We will see. Sino-India bilateral agreements on border peace. The 1993 agreement between India and China, what was this? Deals with maintaining peace and tranquility along the LAC. LAC is line of actual control, the border between India and China. It declared neither side shall use or threaten to use force against the other by any means. No activities of either side shall overstep the LAC. Now, here China has violated this agreement multiple times, because the activities of China has been there in certain territories which actually belong to India, but China is claiming that this is not India, this is China. It also stated, in case of personnel of one side, if one side cross the line of actual control, upon being cautioned by the other side, they shall immediately pull back to their own side of the LAC. Means, if the army personnel, they go on the other side of LAC, they should immediately pull back. 1996 agreement, it was about the confidence building measures in the military field along the LAC with China in the India-China border. Confidence building measures means military to military contact. Both militaries are cooperating with each other. People to people contact or commander to commander contact in military, so that border peace is maintained. As per Article 6 of the agreement, the two countries are not to open fire within 2 kilometers from the LAC. Within 2 kilometers from the LAC, they cannot open fire. This had been stipulated to prevent the dangerous military activities and does not apply to routine firing activities in small arms firing ranges. Means, if the military personnel are practicing in the firing ranges, they do practice their aims, that is not counted. You can practice that in the 2 kilometer region, but against each other you cannot open fire. And that is why in 2020, when you saw a problem in the Galwan Valley with China, at that time they were fist fighting with each other. Nobody picked up arms, because both of these countries were respecting this 1996 agreement, which clearly states that you cannot pick up arms, okay, and you cannot open fire in 2-kilometer region. Now, here is a sum up of that. The 18th edition of India-US Joint Military Exercise Yudh Abhyas is underway in Uttarakhand, that is Oli, but Oli is 100 kilometers from LAC. So, it does not matter whatever we are doing there, if we are opening fire, China should not be concerned with that, because it is 100 kilometers from LAC. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson says the joint military exercise held by India and US near the LAC violates the spirit of relevant agreements signed by China and India. It does not violate any, I would say, clause per se of those agreements, but the Chinese are claiming that it violates the spirit of the agreement, which is quite subjective in nature. So, this is I would say this does not have so much I would say brevity attached to it. Then earlier the Chinese Defense Ministry had said that it saw the drill which is happening against the backdrop of Ladakh standoff as an effort by the third party here refers to the USA, to meddle in the border affairs. They are apprehensive, or they are thinking that in future if any conflict happens between India and China, this third party will meddle, or this third party will interfere in the border affairs. MEA, however, had said it did not understand the reference to the third party. This MEA is Ministry of External Affairs of India, and that it was China that needed to stick to the bilateral agreement and not India. So, this is the stand of India. This is what India has said to the Chinese people, that we are not violating any provisions of any of the agreements signed. You are saying that we are violating the spirit. If we consider that we are violating the spirit, and just look at yourself, you have violated the provisions multiple times, and you are schooling us on this aspect, that we are violating the spirit. Now, this personality, you might all know about this great personality. Now, he was in news because the Delhi High Court gave an interim order, or passed an interim order, to prevent the unlawful use of Bollywood star Amitabh Bachchan's name, image and voice. The court, through its order, restrained persons at large from infringing the personality rights of the actor, and that is why the heading of this topic is personality rights. Basically, his personality is not only just his face, just his body, just his picture, it is his voice also. If anyone is using it without consent from that person, means here in this context it is Amitabh Bachchan, then that will be violating the personality rights of that person. Personality rights are part of right to privacy. Right to privacy is part of Article 21, right to life, fundamental right it is. Okay. So, right to personality, part of right to privacy, part of right to life. Okay. So, this is an order which has been issued by the Delhi High Court. What are personality rights? We will see. Personality rights refers to rights of a person to protect his/her personality under the right to privacy or property. These rights are important to celebrities as their names, photographs or even voices can easily be misused in various advertisements by different companies to boost their sales. Therefore, it is necessary for renowned personalities, celebrities, to register their names to save their personality rights. It is just if they have to register their names, registering is basically you are kind of patenting, you or not patenting, but you are protecting your personality as an IPR. IPR is intellectual property right. Intellectual property right is, is a property which belongs to you, and that property has been created by you by using your intellect, by using your intelligence, and you have the right to use it. That is intellectual property right. Like for example, Microsoft has intellectual property rights over Microsoft Windows. Likewise, here Amitabh Bachchan has, if he registers his personality, means it will be kind of an IPR. Registration will be is kind of an IPR. No one in the country can use his personality traits. His personality traits means his picture, his voice, anything without his consent. If you have to use, you take his consent. If he gives consent, he can give consent by asking for some money. He has the rights, or he can do it voluntarily also. But you cannot use it without his consent. And the court has said that you register your personality, because your personality is protected under right to privacy and right to property also. Right to property is not a fundamental right, but it is a constitutional right under Article 300 of the Constitution. It is your property, it is your privacy. Privacy is a fundamental right. So, that has to be protected, that can be protected by you, and no one can use it or misuse it, I would say. Now, next piece of news is zombie virus. Now, this zombie virus basically was all over electronic media, but UPSC, why I have included this zombie virus as a topic, because UPSC is very fond of asking questions that recently a term zombie virus was in news. It refers to. Now, we all know that global warming is happening, and since many of you are new to preparation, like last week's doubt session, I came across a new person, and prior to that also I have come across some new persons. So, to understand global warming, climate change, we will go to the green board and I will try to explain it to you in very brief. This is the earth, this is the sun, sun rays are coming to the earth, and this is the atmosphere around the earth. Which contains a lot of gases like carbon dioxide, hydrogen and all. Okay, nitrogen, maximum of it is nitrogen. So, the sun rays come, okay, and as an ideal situation, whatever sun rays are coming, those sun rays or those sun rays will be generating heat over here, because the solid surfaces get heated as soon as suns fall on it, okay, and during the night time it gets cooled, okay. In an ideal situation, whatever heat is being generated or is incoming, that much heat should be reflected back or radiated back. This is called as heat budget should be zero. This is an ideal situation, okay. Whatever amount of heat is coming by these sun rays, that amount of heat should be reflected back, okay. But what happens that due to the presence of these gases, and the presence of these gases or the composition of these gases has been altered over the period, over the years. Altered means there are some changes in the composition of the gases, because humans are emitting a lot of gases in pursuit of development. When industrial revolution came in 1750, a lot of industries were set up in Europe, which did a lot of emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, nitrous oxide emissions, methane emissions, etc., etc., etc. Now, those emissions are there in the atmosphere, and carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere for 150 to 200 years. Means a molecule of carbon dioxide which was emitted 150 to 200 years ago, from now onwards will still be there in the atmosphere and will still contribute to global warming or climate change today. But anyways, coming back, this composition has been altered because increasing, I would say, carbon emissions by the humans due to human activity here over many years has happened, and these carbon dioxide or these, I would say, gases do not allow the heat to go. They trap the heat in the Earth's atmosphere. And you might have seen a greenhouse. Okay, greenhouse is there in various nurseries. You go nurseries where it is all covered, plants are there, sunlight comes in, it is not allowed to go back, it is heated over there when you enter a greenhouse. Or another example of greenhouse effect is basically your car. If in the summers you park your car in the sun for an hour or two and you go and open your car, you see how warm it is or how heated it is, because the sunlight was allowed to come in but it was not allowed to go back. That is called as a greenhouse effect. The name comes from the actual greenhouse in the nurseries. So, this greenhouse effect is created. The heat is allowed to come in but it is not allowed to escape. It is not allowed to escape with the presence of these gases which has been emitted by the humans, and these gases are therefore called as greenhouse gases, GHGs, which are creating this greenhouse effect, or this causes rise in temperatures, and rise in temperature is called as global warming, is called as climate change because climate is being changed. So, this is the concept of global warming or climate change. And now, since the average temperatures are rising, and the hottest year on record till date is 2016, and when I talk about from 2015 to 2022, now these 7-8 years, these are the hottest years on record in human history and can be attributed to global warming. So, this is the concept of global warming. When global warming happens, when the average temperatures are rising, there is this ice there in the polar regions, North Pole, South Pole, it will start to melt. It will start to melt, and it is happening. You might have seen multiple videos on social media when glaciers are falling, the big ice blocks are falling, and it is melting. That region which is permanently under ice, it is called as permafrost. It is melting, and which is causing the sea surface levels to rise, because when this ice melts, it will be there in the oceans only, it will go in the oceans only, and which will contribute in the rise of sea surface levels. But anyways, let's come back to the topic, that is zombie virus. Now, this region just below the North Pole is the Siberia region. It is permanently frozen. There is this permafrost over there. Now, since global warming is happening, So ice is melting, ice is thawing, and when ice is thawing or melting, all the things or microbes which were trapped inside the frozen ice, they are getting released in the air. Now, apart from microbes, one more important fact you need to understand, that a lot of methane gas is also being emitted by the melting of ice in permafrost, and methane is one of the greenhouse gases, and one such greenhouse gas which has the highest potential, one of the highest potential of causing global warming. Means global warming is melting ice, melting of ice is releasing methane, means a greenhouse gas which will cause further global warming. It is a cyclic effect, it can come into picture. We need to stop that. But anyways, this melting of ice in the permafrost region of Siberia is releasing a lot of microbes also. Microbes means virus, bacteria and all. And those viruses there have the potential to cause the next pandemic, and according to some reports of scientists, I don't know how much it is authentic or how much it is true, but those viruses have the potential to cause a pandemic which can be 100 times more deadlier than the COVID pandemic. Means in those permanently frozen regions, there are many, I would say, viruses or microbes which are embedded over there in the ice, but when ice is melting, these are being released in the air, and those viruses have been termed as zombie virus. Now, I think the context will be clear. European researchers have recently revived 13 zombie viruses from Russia's Siberian permafrost. What is zombie virus? It is the term used for those viruses which have been dormant for thousands of years. Zombie viruses have been dormant for many years due to being trapped inside the ice and have come to life after the ice melted. The scientists discovered that all of the zombie viruses have the potential to be infectious and hence pose a health danger after researching the live cultures of those viruses. Now, about zombie virus. The virus emerged due to the thawing of permafrost as the global temperatures is rising. The new strain is one of the 13 viruses outlined in the study, each of which possesses its own genome. The oldest, dubbed Pandora Virus Yedoma, it was named after a mythological character Pandora, is 48,500 years old, a record age for a frozen virus returning to state where it has the potential to infect other organisms. It was, it is 48,500 years ago, it was dormant because it was frozen under that, and now it is coming to life. And we as humans do not have the answer, or I would say I would say if it causes a disease, then we do not have our healthcare systems ready for that, because that is a new virus which is going to cause such diseases. So, it is going to be a tough time for the scientists all over the world, and if these viruses start infecting the humans, it is going to be one of the toughest times in human history. And if it is true that these have more than 100 times potential of as compared to the COVID virus, coronavirus, then that is going to be a big problem for us. And this problem is caused by none other than global warming, climate change. Important, very important, International Day for Persons with Disabilities. Now, this International Day on Persons with Disabilities is celebrated on 3rd of December every year. Now, this year also it was celebrated. Okay. Now, if I talk about persons with disabilities, now ठीक है, it is a fact that 3rd December 2022 is International Day for persons with disabilities, but we are not going to stop here. As UPSC aspirants, we need to understand more on persons with disabilities, and this is how we approach current affairs in our sessions, that we go into the basics, we go into other fringe elements, we touch them, and that gives a complete picture to us. Okay. Now, when I talk about the number of PWDs or number of persons with disabilities in India. Now, as per census 2011, that is the latest census we have till now, is that out of 121 crore population, 2.68 crore persons are disabled, or 2.21% of the total population is disabled in India. Now, out of 2.68 crore, 1.5 crore are males and 1.18 crore are females. Means more males are disabled as compared to females. Majority of the disabled, that is 69% of the disabled, reside in rural areas, and the rest 31% are residing in urban areas. So, important insight, but you need to understand one thing, that who are PWDs? What kind of disabilities if you have, you will be considered as a PWD. Is it only limited to physical disabilities? Is it only limited to or does it include the mental disabilities also? Now, in 2011 when the census happened, at that time it was largely limited to physical disabilities, like you cannot move properly, you have leprosy, you cannot hear properly, you cannot watch properly, you cannot see properly, you cannot speak properly, or you cannot speak at all, you cannot see at all, you cannot walk at all. That was kind of disability which was considered, that was physical disabilities were largely focused. But in 2016 there was an amendment, and that amendment to the act, that is Persons with Physical Disabilities Act, something like this is there, we will just cover it as well. The number of disabilities increased, and I will be giving you a task after I complete this topic, that you have to find out the list of disabilities which are there in that law. It obviously includes mental disabilities. Means this 2011 census is only taking into account these 2.68 crore people who are physically disabled, not mentally disabled, because they were not termed as disabled in 2011. But in 2021 census, if it is going to be rolled out anytime soon. In that census, you will see this population goes up, because it will include people with mental disorders as well, or whatever kind of I would say disabilities will be there mentioned in that law. It will be mentioned. Now, about the day, International Day of People with Disabilities is a United Nations sanctioned day celebrated internationally on 3rd December each year. It is sanctioned by United Nations. The annual observance of International Day for Disabled Persons was proclaimed in 1992 by United Nations General Assembly Resolution 47/3. It is being celebrated since 1992. Its objective is to promote the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities in all spheres of society and development, and to increase awareness. General information, but yes, disability in India. Until the 2011 census, questionnaire to identify people with disabilities included questions on 7 kind of disabilities only. But this list of disabilities was expanded to 21 when the Rights of People with Disabilities Act 2016 was introduced. Means in 2016, now we have expanded to 21 kinds of disabilities. In 2011 census, we only took into account 7 kinds of disabilities. Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016, what were the provisions? The Act added mental illness, autism, spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, chronic neurological conditions, speech and language disability, thalassemia, hemophilia, sickle cell diseases, multiple disabilities including deaf, blindness, acid attack victims and Parkinson's disease were largely ignored. A lot of your task is being simplified here, but I need you to find out all the 21 disabilities which are mentioned in this act. Okay. And it is not a tough task. Okay. And what all happened? This act increases the quantum of reservation for people suffering from disabilities from 3 to 4% in government jobs, means 4% reservation these people have in government jobs, and 3 to 5% in higher educational institutes. Every child with benchmark disability between the age group of 6 and 18 years shall have the right to free education, means all those people who are disabled up till 18 years of age, they will have free education. And beyond 18 years, there are various schemes of the government for higher education and all, which we will discuss. So, these are the provisions of the 2016 Act. Programs for disabled in India. What programs are running? The first is Deen Dayal Disabled Rehabilitation Scheme. Now, under this, basically financial assistance is provided to various NGOs for providing various services to persons with disabilities like special schools, vocational training centers, community based rehabilitation, preschool and early intervention. Assistance to disabled persons for purchase, fitting of aids and appliances. This is ADIP scheme. We provide assistance to them, like for example, a person who cannot walk, so artificial limbs, wheelchairs, no? These are assistive devices. So, the government basically helps them in that aspect also. Then National Fellowship for students with disabilities. Okay. This scheme basically aims to increase opportunities to students with disabilities for pursuing higher education. Under the scheme, 200 fellowships per year are granted to students with disability. Schemes of the National Trust for the Welfare of Persons with Autism and all are also considered. So, up to 18 years free education is there according to that law, and beyond that for higher education we have this scheme. So, this is the 3 schemes, but most important is this campaign, the Accessible India campaign. This has to be noted very, I would say. It is also called as, in Hindi, I think it is called as Sugamya Bharat. Now, this Accessible India campaign basically is a campaign, not a scheme, and it focuses on making the life easy of the disabled. Life easy of the disabled, it is working on 3, I would say, aspects. The first component or the first aspect is building environment accessibility. Environment accessibility, objective 1 is enhancing the proportion of accessible government buildings, means there are ramps in the government buildings in which a wheelchair can be taken easily. The buildings and all, the government buildings, I think the target set is 50% of the government buildings by 2023 should be accessible for the disabled. So, this is there. Then component B is transportation system accessibility. We need to make transportation for them easy. Includes 3 objectives for enhancing the proportion of accessible airports, accessible railway stations, accessible public transport for them, and these are objective 2, objective 3, objective 4 of the Accessible India campaign. Then I talk about component C, information and communication ecosystem accessibility, includes 3 objectives. Here we are talking about whatever documents and all is issued by the government, whatever news and all is being read by the government, there should be facilitations for the persons with disability. Like for example, any document, it should have either voice readers or braille language should be incorporated in the government documents. Any news channels which are broadcasting news, sign language should be used for broadcasting news so that it becomes accessible to the persons with disability. So, this should be there. So, public documents and websites as per the international accessibility standards should be maintained. Sign language interpreters should be there. Objective 7, captioning and sign language in public TV news programs, it should be there. So component A is with respect to infrastructure. Component B is with respect to transportation systems. Accessibility should be there in transportation systems. Accessibility should be there in infrastructure systems. Component C, information and communication ecosystem accessibility should be there in all those information sharing, I would say, mechanisms. We should be sharing information or in such a way that the persons with disabilities also get access to that information. Next piece of news is Wassenaar arrangement. When I talk about Wassenaar arrangement, this arrangement is basically an arms control arrangement. Arms control arrangement means in which the countries all over the world, those countries which are member of Wassenaar arrangement, they have to showcase data, they have to maintain data on all the trade in weapons they are doing, or all the trade in weapons they are denying to countries. Means let us suppose country X asked country Y that I want this kind of weapon, and that country Y denied that I can't give you this type of weapon. So this denial of information or denial of offers, this particular information should also be maintained by the member countries. Then only we will come to know that what kind of defense products are in demand and which country is demanding that particular product. And there are 42 members of Wassenaar arrangement, India is one of them. So we will look into it. Okay. India will assume chairmanship of Wassenaar arrangement for a year on January 1, 2023. Again, no, a very major event, because from here UPSC can ask questions. What is Wassenaar arrangement? Is a voluntarily export control regime for arms. Nuclear arms also. Yes, nuclear arms also. Purpose: to promote transparency and greater responsibilities for transfer of conventional arms. Conventional arms means guns and all, guns, bombs and all. Dual use goods. Dual use goods are like uranium. Uranium has two purposes. First, it can be enriched to up to 95% to form a bomb. It can be de-risked to 5% to generate electricity, or can be used in medical purposes. So this is a dual use good. Okay. It has two uses, but if one of the uses obviously related to military applications, so that is why it is included, as well as technologies to prevent destabilizing actions. The body came into being in 1996 to succeed the Cold War era Coordinating Committee for Multilateral Export Controls. This was there in the Cold War era 1945 to 1990. This multilateral body was abolished and this Wassenaar arrangement came into existence. Now, where does this name come from, Wassenaar arrangement? This comes from a suburb called Wassenaar in The Hague, Netherlands, where the agreement to start such a multilateral cooperation was reached in 1995. But the headquarters of Wassenaar arrangement is not Wassenaar, it is Vienna, Austria. It is also in Europe. Okay. So this has to be noted. Now, working, the group works by regularly exchanging information. The member countries, there are 42 member countries, they regularly exchange information in respect of technology, both conventional and nuclear capable, that is sold to or denied to countries outside the grouping. This is done through maintenance and updating of detailed lists of chemicals, technologies, processes and products that are considered militarily significant. Through this exchange of information, the group aims at controlling the movement of technology, material or components to countries or entities which undermine the international security and stability. Means whatever demand is being made by non-member countries of any weapons or of any technology, and if member countries are supplying to them, they should make a record of it. That is mandatory, that is legal for the member countries. and you should also maintain a record of those activities or those denials to any country. If any country asked for any technology or for any weapon and you denied, that record also should be maintained. Is it legally binding on the member countries? Yes, it is legally binding on the member countries. Then only they will come to know that what kind of products are in demand, what kind of products are being taken by which country, like this only. Okay, and that is how you will be able to control the export. The aim according to Wassenaar arrangement is to prevent the acquisition of these items by terrorists. This is important. This is one of the main aims of Wassenaar arrangement. Now, when I talk about the membership, has 42 members, already told you that, and India became a member of Wassenaar arrangement in 2017, with the exception of China. China is not a member of Wassenaar arrangement. All other members of United Nations Security Council, the permanent members of UNSC, these are 5, there are 5 permanent members: USA, UK, France, China, Russia. The P5 we call them, the permanent 5. China is not part of Wassenaar arrangement, rest 4 are part of Wassenaar arrangement, are members of Wassenaar arrangement. Okay. So, this is all about Wassenaar arrangement. Is the membership important? See, generally UPSC asks questions where there are 30 members, less than 30 members generally. However, it has not said that I will be asking questions from multilateral groupings on the basis of members, those who have 30 or less members. It has not specified anywhere, but generally the trend which has been seen is this. If you want, you can memorize the names of the members. The list is there in front of you. Okay, it is there in the notes as well. Now, what is the significance of India assuming the chairmanship of the Wassenaar arrangement? Actually, India could play a very major role in democratizing access to technologies and processes worldwide. Means India can, get the developing and underdeveloped countries also the access to such kind of technologies, which is very much important for their survivals. So, India will democratize this process. Apart from that, there are multiple, I would say, defense startups which are springing up in India. So, India will assess that what kind of products, defense products are in demand worldwide, and that kind of products can be manufactured in India and exported from India. Because India is slowly and steadily coming up or becoming a low cost defense equipment and efficient defense equipment manufacturer in the world. Many defense, I would say, conclaves or many defense, I would say, manufacturing units are coming up in India. We have multiple defense corridors which are coming up in India. If you see nearby Aligarh in UP, there is a defense corridor coming where defense export units will be there, or they will be manufacturing defense equipments, and those defense equipments will be used by the government of India as well as it will be exported to other countries. So, this Wassenaar arrangement presidentship can be beneficial for our defense export units as well. Next is Silchar Sillet festival. Nothing, I would say, very much important in this, but yes, not important, but nothing too conceptual in this, but yes, this particular piece of news is with respect to India and Bangladesh. This Silchar is in Assam region of India, and Sillet is in the Bangladesh. The first festival celebrating the linguistic and cultural ties between the Barak Valley region of Assam and the Sillet segment of Bangladesh began recently. Since it is being celebrated for the first time, the Silchar is in Barak Valley, India, Assam. Sillet is in Bangladesh, and they have cultural similarities. Is hosting the 2-day Silchar Sillet festival. Silchar town is hosting it, and it is being hosted on the 75th year of India's independence and the 50th anniversary of liberation of Bangladesh from Pakistan, because Bangladesh got formed as a nation in 1972. It is organized by India Foundation. The festival underlines the commonalities between India and Bangladesh. The festival will showcase tribal culture, cuisine, arts, crafts and local produce, entertainment, and bring together eminent people from both sides to discuss and deliberate on issues of mutual growth and opportunity. So, this is all from Silchar Sylhet festival. Now, the next piece of news is urban cooperative from urban cooperative banks. Basically, to understand this, first we will need to understand that what are cooperative banks. Now, this piece of news, or this was in news, cooperative banks was in news because RBI has, is categorizing, has recently announced a four-tiered regulatory framework for categorization of urban cooperative banks. They want to categorize urban cooperative banks. Obviously, urban cooperative banks are working in urban areas of the country. Now, according to RBI, such framework is needed to balance the spirit of mutuality and cooperation, and it was needed to uplift the struggling cooperative banks. Now, you need to first understand that what are cooperative banks. Cooperative, as the word stands, there are multiple people who have pooled in their funds, and when they have pooled in their funds, so by pooling their funds, they say that they are going to be the owners of the bank. Let's suppose me and 10 people from you, they have pooled in their funds 1 crore each. We have kept 10 crore in the bank account in the bank, and now from that pool of funds we are running our bank. Anyone wants loans can take from that pool. We will be the customers also of that bank, and we have pooled in our funds also in that bank. That is cooperative bank. Will it be open to outsiders? Yes, it will be open to outsiders also, and we can disburse them loans also. Okay. So, the concept of cooperation banks are like this. A cooperative bank is a small sized financial entity where members are the owners and customers of the bank. They are regulated by the Reserve Bank of India and are registered under the State Cooperative Societies Act. Basically, they are the members. The members are the owners and customers of the bank both. Now, what kind of classification has been done by RBI? Has categorized all UCBs, urban cooperative banks, into 4 tiers. Okay. Tier 1 is basically having deposits up to rupees 100 crore will be called as tier 1. Tier 2, deposits from 100 crore up to 1000 crore. Tier 3, it will cover deposits from 1000 crore to 10,000 crore, and UCBs with deposits more than 10,000 crore will be categorized in tier 4. Means up to 100 crore tier 1, 100 to 1000 crore tier 2, 1000 to 10,000 crore tier 3, and more than 10,000 crore tier 4. Then net worth and capital adequacy ratio. RBI also has come out with norms basically for them, but what kind of norms are there? That the net worth of tier 1 UCBs, urban cooperative banks, should be a minimum of 2 crore and the capital adequacy ratio of 9%. What is a capital adequacy ratio? I will just explain. So, first I will explain, then we will go ahead. Capital adequacy ratio means how a bank functions. You deposit your money in the bank gives interest on that money which you have deposited in the savings account. Now, that money which you have deposited in the savings account is an asset for you, but it is a liability for the bank. On the other hand, if the bank has disbursed loans to you, the bank will earn interest from you on the loans. Now, that amount, that loan amount is an asset for the bank, because the bank is going to earn interest on that. Now, there are some risky assets, means when the bank is not clear whether the loan will be recovered or not. Like for example, Vijay Mallya, bhai leke bhag gaya. That was a risky loan, risky asset for the bank. So basically, capital adequacy ratio is the ratio of bank's capital, whatever banks do have, and to its risk weighted assets and current liabilities. Means liabilities plus risky assets will be there in the numerator upon the capital available with the bank. This is called as capital adequacy ratio, and capital adequacy ratio should be 9%, minimum of 9% for tier 1. For all other UCBs, that is tier 2, 3 and 4, the minimum net worth should be 5 crore and minimum CAR of 12%. So that has to be there, and this is the classification of UCBs. Now this PM Daksh program we will be picking up after the break.